Live from Binghamton, New York, you're listening to the debut podcast episode of Horror Zone 607. My name is Mike C. If you're not familiar with my Facebook page, I'm an avid horror movie fan. I've watched them as long as I can remember. I love watching them, writing about them, and talking to people about them. So that being said, I've invited a few friends to come along on the show today to talk horror. Let me introduce my panel today. First, I've got my special co-host, Rich Coriel from the Three Fat Nerds podcast.
Hey, what's up, everybody? How's everybody doing? Glad to be here.
Next, we've got Jimmy Gazdik from Crimson Brethren and Floodlands.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Definitely, Jimmy. Thanks for being here. And finally, we've got from Xcite Wrestling, Jonny Moose.
Wait, there's a show called Three Fat Nerds.
That's right.
I haven't been on Three Fat Nerds.
We'll talk about
somehow I feel like this is injustice right here.
Hey, we'll talk about it after the show, Moose.
Okay, all right.
I want to be a part of that. So I'm happy to have you guys here. This is my first episode, first time ever doing the podcast. The way I want to start this out, just you guys are all horror movie fans. I'm a horror movie fan. Everybody listening is a horror movie fan. What is it that got you guys into horror? What's your favorite movie? What is it that attracted you to this genre?
Well, I guess what really got me is when I was about 5 years old, my cousins decided they were going to be very mean to me, and they locked me into the room where they were watching the original Nightmare on Elm Street, and it scared the bejesus out of me to the point that I don't think I slept in my own bed for like the next week and a half. And I always call that back to that because for some reason that moment of fear I carried on like later in life to like really start to love horror movies. And I always search for that moment. It doesn't ever quite come back to that. Although on a side note, I was telling somebody I never actually watched Nightmare on Elm Street again until I was like 16. True story. Because I was like literally, I watched the sequels, but I never watched the original until I was like 16 because I was so terrified of the movie. And now I'm like, it's just another day.
Yeah, I was the same way with them. Little known fact, when I used to see on Saturday morning cartoons, I was so afraid of those things. Freddie had his own 1-900 site.
Oh yeah.
I would scream. I'd run up to the TV, change the channel. I'm with you.
What got me into it? A few different things actually. My mom is a big Stephen King fan, and she read his books all my childhood. But I'd always see her books, and I'm not much of a reader. I read sometimes, but I got into it through that. And I had this neighbor live next door to me. His name's Chris Strong. Him and I started watching a bunch of horror movies together when I was around like 13. I think Return of the Living Dead was the first one. And every weekend, him and I would go down to Video King. We'd walk there. And I think it was like 10 movies for $10 as long as they were older ones. And every weekend we'd do that. And actually a funny thing, when I was a kid too, I think it might have been like 3rd or 4th grade, I had this art teacher. She had a Pet Cemetery poster in her classroom, and I thought that I always wondered. I'm like, what is that? Like, I always wondered like if that was a book and I found out later it was a movie. But yeah, those are some of my first impressions of horror.
I'm not sure if that would fly nowadays.
Probably not.
Cemetery.
Probably not.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the video stores being gone because my memories of that were going like every week. Me and my friends would at least rent 3 like old horror movies a week and watch them. And like you can't do that anymore. I mean, you have the Netflix and stuff, but it's not the same.
It's not the same. Man. Video King had the little shack, the little haunted house shack.
Yep.
It's the little cabin. I missed that.
To me, it was like an event to go to the movie store.
It really was.
Every week. It was just, I like look forward to that every week.
They also had the saloon doors to the other area.
Yes.
That your buddy would accidentally push you into, and then it was a whole nother world of...
This isn't comedy.
First, I don't know what my first horror film is, but the one that I have in my head as the first real experience was Texas Chainsaw Massacre when I was really, really young. Oh, yeah. And I'd heard about it. I heard it was, kind of brutal. And asked my mom, like, hey, it's going to be on at 10:30. Can I watch it? And she's like, absolutely not. But back in that day, there's one cable box. It was usually in the parents' room or something like that. So at 10:30, I moseyed on in the room, sat on the floor. If they could see me, they probably would have only seen the tip of my head. And I watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre by myself in my parents' room, no less. At a really young, I don't even know how young I was at that point, and I think that was the beginning of the end for not being warped in some way, and it was just a brutal movie. Still today, for its grittiness, it wasn't a matter of how much blood could we get on screen. It's how someone gets hit in the head and they start convulsing and it
was very visceral.
Yeah, it was an experience, which probably warped my normalness now. But then you look at Halloween. Halloween was real big, the original Halloween, in my household at least, and it went from there to the Friday the 13th, all stuff that we'll probably talk about sooner than later.
That's good stuff right there. For me, it was actually The Exorcist that absolutely ruined my life to this day. It's the only horror movie that I still cannot watch. I checked it off the bucket list a few years ago and did sit down and watch it by myself in the dark on a very cold, rainy Saturday night. And it brought back some bad memories. Just a terrifying movie for me. Anything to do with possession really gets to me, but that's the one. What do you guys think makes a great horror movie?
Great horror movie? I'm kind of torn in two different things. I have my love for the slasher films. So in that aspect, you always want a pretty, great killer. I think the better, I have just love in my heart. My favorite horror movie of all time is Halloween. So that's why I have love for the slasher films. But I'm also a big atmosphere guy. I love like the atmosphere, the setting of them. I think that the better the setting, usually the better the movie. If it's creepy, it's desolate, if it makes me feel kind of uncomfortable, if you will, I think it's great.
I would agree 100% with that.
I'm pretty much on the same level as you, but character, you have to have a good killer, obviously, but you also have to have a good character that is going against the killer. So the atmosphere too. I don't know, like in Nightmare on Elm Street, the dream world, like something unique is where I'm getting at. I don't know, something like that.
I don't know. That's the best answer I can give you. It depends on what mood you're in. You can watch a movie like take the two It's.
Yes.
You watch the original It, which I just literally watched for the first time about 3 weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah, never saw the original one. I saw the new one before I saw the original one. And the new one was there was a lot of jump scares, but not cheesy ones. There was a lot of there was gore, there was legit scary things going on. You watch the old one was more of a TV movie, so it was a little less, there was no real gore. It was more psychological horror in a lot of ways for whatever it was, 80 or 9 or whatever it was when it was made. Two different kinds of movies when you look at them back to back. Obviously, the fact that one was more of a let's jump around in the timeline, which didn't really happen in the new version because they knew they were just going to make 2 movies out of it. But, I can sit there and watch A Nightmare on Elm Street and enjoy Freddy being Freddy, and then watch a movie like Friday the 13th where the killer doesn't talk. He's just lurking, and he's always around, and you're just wondering when the axe is gonna fall, literally. two different kinds of movies.
Right.
Two different levels of enjoyment. But really, sometimes it's just what your mood is. I can turn on a movie on Showtime I haven't ever seen that's some kind of slasher movie that I should never like because it's cheesy and it's just gore for the sake of gore. But then I'll enjoy it to no end. It really, it's the mood you're in and what kind of movie you want to see. The Conjuring, I hadn't seen The Conjuring. I wasn't on board. Then I watched it and I'm like, wow, this is really good. And that's all psychological.
Absolutely.
That's all jump scares in a psychological way. And you get chills like, oh, something's happening. Oh, that door just moved just a little bit. You know what's going on. Meanwhile, it's not somebody coming with an axe. It's not somebody trying to stab you with a knife. Totally different experience, but the enjoyment's the same.
Absolutely. It's the suspense factor. For me, a little bit of everything you guys touched on here, atmosphere and suspense. People ask me all the time, what is it that you love about horror? What makes a good horror movie? It's atmosphere and suspense. They don't always have the best plot. There's not always the best acting. Atmosphere and suspense. Like you guys said, the original Halloween is something I probably consider my all-time favorite, but lately my opinion's changed a little bit with that. The original Black Christmas may be my all-time favorite. Halloween took a lot from that, and it had so much suspense, so much atmosphere. If you guys haven't seen it, that's one you have to check out. Moving on, what do you guys think of the recent Hollywood horror films? Do they hold up to the classics?
So far... Well, it's a whole different ballgame now. I really think that like the newer movies, to Moose's point, have come out to be more like psychological. They're not more, it's before it was more about the killing, more about the gore level, and now they've kind of gone more to a like thriller kind of play with your mind kind of sense. I mean, we have seen that the good old slasher film will make it through. Because we'll be talking about it later, I'm assuming, but the resurgence of some of those, especially because Blumhouse has done such a great job putting out, Happy Death Day and a couple other movies that are taking you back to that slasher style. But I really do think that we are on a precipice of doing a little different, but you never know. I mean, I just have a place in my heart for that old stuff, especially because I love the B movies. I'm a big fan of like the 1970s B movies.
Oh, absolutely.
And great stuff. Just brutal stuff. So,
what do you think, Jimmy?
I like a lot of them, but some I just don't like. Like the new Nightmare on Elm Street, I did not like that at all. But the Friday the 13th remake, I liked it, and they did some different things than the original. They kind of incorporated the second one in it, and
right.
They gave you that little sliver of the first,
yeah,
and then it was all Jason instead of the first where it's all the mother, and then
totally.
then you have to wait till 2 for Jason.
Spoiler alert, by the way.
I hope it's not a spoiler at this point, Josh. If you're listening to this show and you haven't seen,
shame on you.
Shame on you.
That was 9 years ago.
Yeah, it's 9 years. Yeah, exactly.
Like Rob Zombie, what he did with Halloween, there's good and bad, but I don't know. It still doesn't live up to the John Carpenter's version, in my opinion. But I give him credit for like trying,
right,
like, for sure. But
it seems like they go in spurts. The Scream messed up horror films for a long time by creating the let's break the fourth wall, let's nod and wink at the audience. Oh, you can't run up the stairs because you get killed. let's expose horror for what it is while trying to make a horror film. And then you have all the knockoff movies after that. I still know what you did with last summer and whatever. And then you get the Conjuring type movies, and then you have a bunch of movies that are similar to that. Which,
You forgot the era of torture porn.
Oh, I
like the Hostels and Saws.
Yes, yep. The Saws. You're right. And but it gets to the point where you do that, and then a movie like Freddy vs. Jason comes out, which takes you back to a totally different era.
Oh yeah.
Which should not work based on the way they made the movie, where it's almost a comedy inside of a horror film. But well, for me, other people might hate it. It totally worked because that's what I wanted.
I enjoyed it.
I wanted Jason killing people. I wanted Freddy killing people. Although in that movie, he really doesn't kill anybody. Maybe one or two. Jason does all the work. They should have made another one, and the fact that they never made that second movie,
they dropped the ball on that.
Oh, they totally
that was a missed
dropped the ball.
opportunity.
What is it? He definitely killed the Jason Mewes lookalike because they couldn't get Mewes to do it.
I believe that's exactly what happened.
That was what happened.
Yeah.
With it. They wanted Jason Mewes, and they didn't get Jason Mewes.
They got to look like that. That's all you need. I'm just sad that the original ending didn't happen, where they got pulled down into hell, and all of a sudden the hooks come out of nowhere, hook both of them, and Pinhead comes out and he's like, hey, what's the problem, guys? And then it goes dark. That would have been a tremendous ending to me, but they can.
Well, they did flirt with the sequel being Freddy versus Jason versus Ash. And
yes,
then they made it a comic book.
They made it a comic book.
That did follow right up after the movie. So kind of the sequel was a comic book.
Well, I mean, Jason Goes to Hell, they start talking about the book, and they're already teasing it there without...
Oh, yeah.
That's exactly what they were doing.
And,
absolutely.
They had opportunities to make this better. The Nightmare on Elm Street remake movie was okay. It's just the problem with Nightmare on Elm Street is... whoever plays Freddy, there's a big bar and it's very high.
They're not Robert Englund.
They're not Robert Englund.
They're not Robert Englund. Good and bad, Jason is the guy behind a mask who gets bigger and bigger by like the movie. Yeah, there's other parts to a Jason movie, but you need a big guy who wears a mask who can kill people. That's a Jason movie. The formula's there, but it's hard to remake a character-driven movie like this. Halloween is, I'd say it's easy, but they've had like 10 movies, and it's hit or miss whether it's been good or not. But, he's a dude with a mask. He doesn't talk. You don't have to have... It's a presence. You have that presence.
I think the original Michael Myers is back, though, for this
Nick Castle.
Yes.
Sadly, he's only in a cameo appearance in it. He's only doing one or two scenes. But, and I got to jump in real quick just because, a lot of the Hollywood horror movies, they weren't good for a long time. There's been a resurgence. A lot of that we can thank James Wan for. The Conjuring universe, Saw, whether you like Saw or not, it was massive. Now all of a sudden, after a long delay, the slasher genre is making a comeback, and I'm telling you, this is going to be a big comeback. And it started with Happy Death Day. Hellfest was good. You got the new Halloween coming out. That's going to do massive numbers, and it is going to explode on the scene, and we're going to see another resurgence. All the copycats are going to come back. There's going to be a big comeback for the slasher.
Now, I heard they're making Child's Play. Is that true?
That is true.
Okay.
Actually, they're remaking it twice, kind of, because they're doing a TV show that's based on the original series.
Yes.
And then they're doing a remake of the movie.
Yes, that's
absolutely
interesting. Correct. MGM, who originally, I believe, had the rights to it, they wanted to remake it, and it's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be Chucky. It's going to be a doll that looks like Chucky, but it's going to be a robot this time.
Oh, weird.
So,
is Tiffany going to be in it?
No idea yet. There hasn't been a lot of details to it. That's our take on Horror 101. What do you guys think? Hit us up on Facebook and Twitter at HorrorZone607. We're going to take a quick break before talking about one of our favorite classics, Friday the 13th. You're listening to Horror Zone 607.
2, 3, 4! Turn
Coming back to the sounds of Crimson Brethren, you're listening to Horror Zone 607. As I mentioned at the end of the last segment, we were talking about recent horror films, but let's dig into one of the horror movie classics, Friday the 13th. About 6 months ago, I was fortunate enough to be a part of something that I'll never forget. A lot of people don't realize that the original Friday the 13th was filmed at an actual working Boy Scout camp down in New Jersey called Camp Nobi Bosco. I was fortunate enough to win tickets to that, to take a tour of the camp, and it was absolutely phenomenal. You're seeing cabins that were used in the film, all of the filming locations. Everything is amazing to actually be on the set of this classic film. The same time I was there in the town of Blairstown where this movie was filmed, Jimmy here was hanging out with a certain somebody as well. Tell us about that.
I have a friend, Kevin Kober. He promotes shows throughout our area, and he actually came across Ari Lehman, the guy who played Jason in the first movie. He has a band. So Kevin contacted Ari and got him to play Binghamton before. So we went to Blairstown earlier this year in April, and we met up with Ari, had dinner with him. Such a fantastic, nice guy. He signed autographs all day at the Blairstown Museum, which is a really great place. It's run by this couple, Jeanette and Tony, very nice people, and every Friday the 13th, they plan to have an event there to celebrate the movie, and they do it for the fans. It's really cool. I personally am gonna try to make every event that they have. They said they were gonna have one next September. That's the next Friday the 13th. So we got a ways to go, but definitely plan on hitting that up.
They actually had one of these this past weekend, believe it or not.
I heard about that, actually.
Yeah, my friend Dennis, after the last one, I told him about it, showed him where to sign up, and he was lucky enough to get tickets to it.
Sweet.
And he took a tour of the Blairstown Museum, and he bought a bunch of things from it, different souvenirs from it and whatnot. Man. He loved it there. The whole town was really cool, though. It was a very quaint town. It was a lot nicer than I expected it to be.
Totally.
To see the sights, again, it's amazing. I had breakfast that morning at the diner that they filmed the scene with Steve Christie.
That's really cool, man.
It was amazing. I sat right at the bar, nearby where it was in the film.
Sweet.
Walked around where the archways were, where the character Annie walks in the beginning of the film.
Yeah. She was there in July, actually. I met her. Robbie Morgan.
Yes, she was there this weekend, as well as the guy that played Officer Dorff and Adrian King.
That's so cool.
So, yeah, all three of them were there, and my buddy got to meet all of them. Yeah. I did get to meet Adrian King, who was probably the nicest, sweetest person you could ever imagine.
She seems that Robbie Morgan's a sweetheart, too.
Was she? My friend did say that. So, but yeah, Adrian King, I can't say enough nice things about
Steve Dash was really nice, too. He came in July. He played Jason in the second movie, Sackhead Jason.
Yes.
So that was cool to meet him. He's a stuntman back in the 80s. He did a lot of stuntman work, but I think he's mostly known for playing Jason.
So, yeah, Jason drowned in 1957 at Camp Crystal Lake. I was lucky enough to actually get to hang out on the beach where the activity occurred. Actually had my hands in that water, and kind of got to swim around a little bit where Jason was.
So were you like playing in the water, and then like you were just like, oh, I made it, and then out of the water comes Jason?
That's
like
pretty much what happened. Yes, that's exactly what happened. Jason jumped out of the water, and
then it was just a dream.
And then it was all a dream. The whole thing was so cool. Right across from the lake is the main cabin where most of the movie takes place. And Alice is getting chased around by Mrs. Voorhees in the main cabin, as well as the entire camp.
Spoiler alert.
Yes, spoiler alert. But to actually be in the main cabin where so much took place, to be standing where Kevin Bacon got an arrow through his neck.
I was going to say, did you actually see the spot where that's the iconic spot?
I stood
Kevin
right there.
Bacon, boom, arrow through the neck. That's pretty awesome.
It was pretty amazing to stand there. I got a bunch of pictures of that I'm going to be putting up on the site coming up here soon. So, I want you guys to take a look at that and let me know what you think.
Big question for me. Okay, so did you see this did you see the area in part 6 where or was it 6 or 4? No, it's 4 where the dude goes down in the wheelchair?
No, that was part 2.
Oh, that was 2.
Was that 2?
Yeah.
Oh, man. See, I'm getting all
That's
the kills
in Connecticut.
Yeah,
I think.
the problem with that is,
it.
only the original was filmed at Camp Novi Bosco. All of the sequels were filmed at different locations after that. They were supposed to be Camp Crystal Lake, and most of them are nearby locations, but they were filmed all over the country.
I knew they would do some movie magic trickery like that.
Always the
A
movie
lot of
magic
them
trickery.
were in California, right?
A few of them were. I think there was the one from part 6, I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, was in Georgia.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think one of them was in Georgia. I just don't remember exactly which one.
I can't either.
You know what's weird, though, is you take a camp originally that's in the Northeast, and then you start moving it out of the Northeast, and nobody notices. I'm just saying. I mean, that's something good but that's good for the directors if nobody notices.
It really is. Again, the movie magic.
Okay, and also the fact that, fast forward to part 8, and we have to believe that Camp Crystal Lake is adjacent to the ocean. It empties into the ocean, so that way we can have a cruise to New York City.
Yes, that is actually true. Part 8, it starts at Camp Crystal Lake, which is a small lake, a small pond, basically, if you will. And a group of students are going to take their class trip.
Gigantic cruise ship that does not look like a cruise ship.
No, not at all. This thing apparently has 8 levels in it, and it's the size of the Titanic even. And it leaves Camp Crystal Lake, and the next thing you know, it's in the middle of a giant sea storm on the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, but I thought it was even more telling. If you look at that boat, does anybody in this room would you gotten on that ship? I'm just saying, just looking at it. Like even before Jason's on it, just look at that ship. Tell me you would have gotten on. Bruce?
Sure. Sure.
Jimmy?
I would have, but I wouldn't have wanted to. How about you, Mike?
Oh, I'd get on it in a heartbeat just to explore it. I might be lying.
Yeah, but obviously that was because of budgetary reasons later on. They couldn't shoot the whole movie in New York because it costs a lot of money to pay for the likeness of New York City. A lot of money. The only scene shot in New York City was Jason
Square.
in Times Square. They did it guerrilla style.
Yes, they did.
Yeah,
they really did.
Man. They didn't ask for permission.
You can see people in the background in the city watching it being filmed.
Yeah, and because they didn't want to ask for permission.
No, it was actually Jason Takes Vancouver.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All day.
All day long. So
Jason takes a boat. That's
took
all
a boat.
it is.
Jason took a boat from Vancouver to Vancouver.
So he was on a boat.
He was on a boat. He was actually on 2 boats, technically. Because, there was another boat.
Oh, yeah, because he killed some people. Yeah.
That's how he got his hockey mask back, because he didn't have a hockey mask. Got to get another hockey mask.
Got to get another one.
People bring hockey masks to Camp Crystal Lake. They keep bringing them back, so he keeps having a new mask, so they can keep ripping it off and get a new one.
Fast forwarding to a point you made in the first segment.
Sure.
If you looked, the funny part about the remake was I thought one of the best parts was how he got his mask in the remake. Because I thought that was really kind of a funny way to do it, in opposed to how it was originally done. I mean, waiting 2 movies because it was part 3. But yeah, I liked how, and that was one of the parts of the remake that I enjoyed.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome.
What do you guys actually think of the sequels?
They're hit or miss. I mean, there's a lot of good and there's a lot of bad.
Yeah, there is.
I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Part 6. Part 6, I think, was even though it introduces zombie Jason, it's really good. But I could probably live without 7 and 8.
Yeah.
And 9 definitely, because I don't even know. 9 I kind of consider that to be like the Halloween 3 almost, because it started to introduce things that we never knew were about anything.
Yeah, it's
Jason possessing people.
Yeah, it's kind of the redheaded stepchild of the series.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Moose he's got to chime in.
Whoa. Did you just say you could do without number 7 with Tina with her psychic telekinetic powers that beats the ever-living poop out of Jason with her mind?
That's up there.
You know.
That's up there with Nightmare on Elm Street 5, where they didn't have enough money, so they have Invisible Freddy kung fu fighting.
yes.
I am a gigantic fan of the Friday the 13th movie. I might even say it might be my favorite of the genre movies like that.
The franchises.
The
if you will.
franchises.
Yeah.
There you go. Always big on words. The fourth movie scared me to not take showers because he killed somebody in the shower. I always thought, didn't matter the door was locked, did not matter. I checked the closet 3 times, did not matter. I would look out the shower curtain to make sure there wasn't somebody in that bathroom.
That torments me to this day. And it started when I saw the back of the VHS box at the video store, and that was on there.
Listen, nothing's going to ever trump the fact that Ghoulies ruined going to the bathroom for me forever. I'm so continue on, Moose.
The fourth one to me was the scariest. It started in the hospital where he came out of the cooler. That one was the worst one to me. However,
worst isn't good.
It's good.
Okay.
I think that's one of the
scariest.
I just wanted to point that out because somebody might think you were like,
no.
4 is great. Yeah, 4 is great.
It is.
For me, that was the one. But if it's on, it doesn't matter what day, doesn't matter what time. If Friday the 13th Part 7 is on, I will watch it.
Is it because of the campiness, though? Is that part of the reason?
It's a little bit of everything.
Because the campiness is entertaining. I will have to say 7 and 8 are super campy, but they are entertaining.
Well, 6 is actually the campiest one because they took a comedic take on it, but it's a crowd pleaser. I love that
awesome movie.
It really is.
Tom Matthews is awesome.
Tom Matthews is awesome.
Thank you.
He was actually yesterday I was watching Return of the Living Dead, and there he was.
Yes.
I guess we could say that trilogy right there, 6, 7, and 8 are campy, but they're all I like them a lot. 9 though, I still have to attest. 9 is bad.
It's not my
bad.
favorite.
It's like I don't know. It's almost like Nightmare on Elm Street 2, like where they basically stole that storyline where Freddy can possess people, and in 9 they like, oh, Jason possesses people, but he's a little worm that squirts into you, and then you become Jason. Like, and then he's got to go find his dead mother. Never mind. We're not going to get into that.
We don't have to get into that again.
What do you guys think of Part 5 when Jason isn't present?
Yeah, Part 5, it gets more hate, I think, than Part 9.
I know that's a spoiler.
It doesn't deserve it.
It doesn't deserve it. Here's my thing with that. There's a certain something about the first, I would say 5, 6 movies in that series, probably the first 5. They all kind of feel the same to me. They look the same to me. Part 5, although Jason isn't in it, that is the most mean-spirited, vicious movie in that series.
I think that the people hate it because at the end you find out it's not Jason, so it's not the payoff you want. Like, the payoff you want is it's Jason.
True.
And then they kind of tease the Tommy Jarvis turn a la,
That never kind of came to be.
Yeah, later on the Halloween 4 did.
Yes.
At the end with Jamie Lloyd. So therefore, like they obviously Friday the 13th did it first because that movie came out first. But I just don't think it's satisfying. Like, that's why I think people don't like it. However, I agree with you. The movie as a whole, I love the brutality, and I mean the axe murder that isn't even Jason when it's at the home when what's the guy's name?
Junior.
No. It was when Vic killed Joey,
Yes,
if
Joey.
that's your attitude, you can't have this candy bar.
Right.
I guess that was campy too. So we can throw it in there. Like, I guess 6, 7, and 8 were campy, but they're still fun.
They always were fun. Every one of those is fun. I mean, 5, if we're going to talk about 5, let's not forget about Violet's Dance.
Oh, jeez. How do you feel about Violet's Dance, Moose? How's that going for you?
It's okay. But I'm going back to 6. not to deviate from
Oh, that's
5,
fine. We're going everywhere.
But that led to a 13-year quest of me going to Alice Cooper shows to see the Man Behind the Mask song.
Yes.
That when I went to see him for the first time in 2000, I thought that's what he's going to play. That's not what he played at all. That was in his Marilyn Manson sounding days. And 13 years later, I finally got to see it, including having like a mock Jason take one of the girls and kill her. That was all because of number 6. So,
That's true.
It's warmed my heart thinking about that.
Okay, serious question, though. Better dance in the Friday series, Violets or Crispin Glovers?
Crispin Glovers.
Crispin Glovers.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this. How did you feel about the remake? They redid it.
2009.
I was a fan of the remake. I mean, I don't know how I felt about him being a mountain man who was mentally stunted, yet somehow built tunnels and booby traps and all kinds of stuff that he used to kill people with.
Yeah, one thing.
And he really liked his weed too. Don't forget.
Oh yeah,
He did.
the subplot. I was going to say
really
that.
big on the weed.
Subplot about the weed is one of the most missed parts in that entire.
It really
movie.
was.
Like, think about it. They're there to find weed. He kills them off originally, and then finally, the guy who is taking his weed. That's how he gets his mask. When he kills him while he's accosting some mannequin.
He was.
It was just.
It was a little uncomfortable.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the remake, when I originally saw that, I saw the midnight showing right at midnight on that Friday the 13th. It was in February. And I loved it when I first saw it. Watching it after that, I was not a big fan of it. I think that I would have liked it more if it was considered a sequel. But as a remake, I don't know, something about it I just don't like to this day.
Fair enough. I like it overall, but there's parts about it I don't like. Some of it I don't want to get into, but
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what the director was thinking with some of the stuff they did. But I have a question. What do you guys think of Friday the 13th Part 2 as a sequel? Like, do you guys think it's a good sequel, or do you think they could have done better? What's the take? What kind of take do you guys have on it?
It's a strange sequel to me. And the reason I say that is because you're introducing a new character, essentially. I mean, we did see Jason as a child, and we know the story. But essentially, the killer is now something you've never seen. You went through the whole first movie, and you had, we find out it's the mother. And now you have to introduce it. So it's almost like a first movie, but it is a sequel because it does justice to Part 1. It's always been weird for me because, yes, the Part 1 basically is the backstory to Part 2. If that makes sense in a way.
Oh, definitely.
It really is. And to me, Part 2 is it's the best one in the series. It is my favorite. As much as I love the original, Part 2 to me is the best, most solid movie in the entire series. You've got what became one of the most iconic, if not the most iconic, masked killers in slasher movie history being introduced. Although he had his backstory in the original, this is the introduction of Jason Voorhees. The movie, the kills are brutal. The characters are pretty likable. It has a great story. The setting, although it's disappointing that it's not filmed in the same location that the original one was, it takes place at a camp nearby, so they get away with it. I don't know. That's always been my favorite movie in the entire series. What do you guys think?
No, I liked it. The opening scene of him pretty much hunting down his mother's killer, that always kind of seemed weird to me.
That was a little off.
How did he get there? How did he know where she lived?
He knew her phone number to call.
Yes,
and,
he did.
Yeah.
For someone who's not supposed to be all there mentally, he
He knew a lot.
He was on the ball on this one.
And let's not forget about the fact that he supposedly drowned, and she was avenging his death in the original. How did he grow up to be such a big boy? And
not only that, but we obviously know he hears his mother's voice. Like, his mother's voice, though, is like from when she was older. Now, mind you, it could be still the same, but did she not know he was alive? Did she know he was alive?
That's where the confusion
how would he survive on his own? Like, honestly, because you're led to believe that he's not, mentally capable. So therefore, you would assume that there would be no way that he could have lived on his own.
For sure. I got one more question too. Do you guys wish that they introduced the hockey mask in the second one, or do you wish they kept the sack head? What are your thoughts on it?
Personally, I love the sack head. I think that's scarier than the hockey mask.
Yeah,
always have.
Definitely freaky.
For iconic likeness alone, I love the hockey mask just because it's iconic. I think the way they did it was fine. I think that it was a good story, because they it's not like, oh man, there's just a hockey mask. There's a backstory. Shelley's playing pranks on people, has a hockey mask. His mask gets ripped. He finds hockey mask. There you go. I mean, it wasn't cheesy like, oh man, he went to a sporting goods store and bought a hockey mask.
Right.
Yeah.
Or he just showed up in the third movie and bam, he has a hockey mask.
Yeah, he's got a different mask on. Yeah.
Yeah, he goes through most of the movie and he finds it organically, just like he finds his weapons. Like that was another thing that they've done real well in the series. Finds his weapons organically. So
except for maybe part 7, I'm not quite sure how he got some of the weapons, especially how he kills Terry Kaiser's character
once
with
again,
that buzzsaw.
He answered already. It's all mental. It's all psychic, man. Moose already told you.
The buzzsaw was pretty good, though.
Moose, how do you feel about the hockey mask, though?
It's you used the word iconic, and that's just Jason. The bag head's cool and all, and just the hockey mask. It's scary, and then as it takes battle damage, becomes more scary, and the only thing that's bad about the hockey mask is when it gets destroyed, they somehow find a stupid reason for him to find another one. That's the only thing, part 8. Yeah. Oh, he just happened to have a hockey mask because, I guess it's the legend of the guy with the hockey mask, so he had to bring one. But outside of that, for me, the hockey mask was the way to go.
Well, good stuff here, guys. That's all the time we have for Camp Crystal Lake right now. The story of Jason Voorhees, which started at Camp Novi Bosco in Blairstown, New Jersey. It's come a long way to where it is now. It's a true testament to where it stands as one of the great horror films of all time. The next segment, though, that we're going to get into, we're going to be talking about another classic film and a new spin on it with the brand new Halloween. You guys are listening to the Horror Zone 607.
Chemistry
Welcome back to Horror Zone 607. For the third segment, we're going to get serious, guys. In October of 1978, one of the most legendary movies of all time came into theaters and took the world by storm. On October 19th, 2018, a big sequel is going to be hitting theaters. We're, of course, talking about the one and only Halloween.
Don't you mean like 8, 9, 10 movies? I mean, we are getting rid of a lot for this one, and I am excited. I just wanted to point out that it's like the one and only would be like a little. It's not fair for this one.
It really isn't. This is technically Halloween 2.
Technically.
It's also technically a remake of Halloween H2O.
Now wait a second. Let me pipe in right now because I know I've listened. I participated in other podcasts and just go out there and say, listen, if you don't want to know what might happen in this movie that comes out in a day or two, you might want to fast forward a little bit till we get into the next segment because there may just be, in fact, some spoilers.
I'm trying to be super spoiler free.
No, I'm going all in.
You're going all in?
I'm going all in.
All right, go all in.
Hashtag
all in.
Spoilers. So I'm just throwing that out there. If you don't want to know anything, not that we don't want you to listen to the show, because we do. What you're going to want to do is fast forward to the next segment, listen to that, go watch the movie, come back, re-listen to the show. Or you should listen to the whole show. And then you'll
re-download the show, too.
Re-download, because you may want those download numbers high. Yeah, so just to throw that out there for the couple people that are listening. But darn it, I didn't want to know this, whatever it might have been. So I'm just throwing it out there.
All right, so we'll just say spoilers ahead.
Yeah, somewhat. There's some. I mean,
wow, that was so much more succinct than what I
know, but we wanted to let you go because it sounded great. It did. It sounded great. But
it really did. Two thumbs up here.
But I just want to point out, like, in theory, we're not going to talk about anything I don't think that is not already been in a trailer. So, right. I mean, pretty much I've stayed away from, other than seeing that it got amazing reviews in Toronto, I've stayed away from like anything that was kind of a spoiler. But I got to be honest, those people who signed the gag orders in Toronto kind of live by them because there's not like a ton that's kind of gotten out.
Nothing's leaking.
Yeah, they've just made reference to like it being like returning to the roots of slasher films and that this is the best movie they've ever seen. And you've heard that stuff. I mean, obviously, how many of them are paid shills? How many of them are real? We'll find out when we see it. But it's got a great Rotten Tomatoes score. Last I checked, it was still at an 82%.
Was it?
So yeah. So it's looking like it's going to be huge.
And it is going to be huge. Right now they're projecting, last I saw, over $60 to $80 million in the United States alone.
Yeah, they're looking at 80 million, which would be the biggest horror opening in the history of the genre. If that just from pre-sales.
When I saw that the first showing happened in Toronto, I can't help myself. I want to read the reviews. I want to see if this is going to be the movie we all hope it will be, or will it be that some of the writers who do comedy mostly went too far and made it into the movie we didn't want it to be. Business Insider, whatever page that is, did not care about spoilers. It was the only negative review that I read, and I only read the first paragraph because it spoiled 2 kills right in the first paragraph. I was super annoyed. The trailer kind of spoils those as well.
I was going to say, the trailer spoils like 6 kills.
Yeah.
Like, and that's why I haven't watched it.
Yeah.
I
haven't either.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if you haven't watched all the trailers have spoiled like 6 kills.
Yeah, and that's why I saw the first trailer that first debuted. I have refused to watch any since.
But I want to point out, if you spoil 6 kills in a trailer, that means there's a lot of body count.
Hopefully that's the case, and they're not giving away the whole movie in the trailers, which is why I'm not watching it.
I don't think they are, but the second trailer, it's funny because you just kind of watch. It's from Michael's point of view, which is amazing because usually when they have this big movie based around this horror person, murder or whatever, usually you don't see much of that person in the trailer. They want to leave that for reveals, but everybody knows who he is. The whole movie is Laurie Strode versus Michael Myers in the ultimate final finish beatdown. And the second trailer, it shows him pretty much go house, to house to house murdering people.
Like the consecutive shot in a trailer, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a throwback to the original movie from what I hear.
Yeah, I heard it goes on a little longer than what it does in the trailers, but yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Pretty much it's not just Michael just looking for war. He's just like, I'm here. I'm going to start just murdering people.
I agree with you. It's just kind of like he's just like, well, I have this main event to attend to, but I got some training first. I'm going to just dip off in these houses, pick off some easy targets, like make it happen.
Like you watch and you're just like, oh, this is going to be tremendous.
I think the scene that did it for me in any trailer was the first trailer that made me hyped to see this movie. And it was the first time, and I mean, they've done it in every trailer since, but it was the first time I saw the teeth getting dropped over the top of the
It's almost
stall.
like a trick or treat.
That was, it was amazing. And you're just like, oh, man, those are teeth. Yeah. Yeah.
They really are.
Yeah.
When I first saw that too, my first thought was I've been hearing all along how they're making him the Shape again. Mm-hmm. It's going back to the original, which was virtually blood-free. The violence was there, but it was, it wasn't like Rob Zombie. And I thought, oh boy, I hope they're not going to do another Rob. Yeah, and I was hoping they're not going to, but everything I'm hearing is that that's not the case.
It sounds like it's a combination of the two. When it's gory and it's bloody, it's gory and it's bloody. And
that's what I've read.
They don't hold back, but they don't do gore for the sake of gore.
Just for the gore. From what I'm hearing, the suspense that was in the original is in this sequel.
Oh,
that's awesome.
I've heard, like I said, I mean, there's a few bad reviews out there, but there's always going to be a few people who don't take. And I feel like that, like I said, for the most part, you're sitting at 82% on Rotten Tomatoes, where people tend to like bash the hell out of things, and it has like I think it's a 94% of people want to see it on there that are saying that they can't wait for it because they do that meter before it comes out is pretty outstanding. And the fact that already from pre-sales and speculations, you're putting this movie at $80 million for a horror franchise, especially one that in this case was kind of partly written and produced by Danny McBride.
Right.
Which is awesome.
That's what I was alluding to, though. Danny McBride is known more for his comedy than he is for anything like this. And as soon as that got released, that he was one of the writers and one of the guys behind it, immediately you kind of get that.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Danny McBride, but I did like him in the Alien Covenant movie. But I'm on board from everything I've been hearing.
Well, here's the thing: when you come to find out somebody has a passion, like i.e., and we've seen this work recently, of course, with Jordan Peele.
Yes,
we've seen it work. So you can go from a comedian to go making Get Out, which was amazing.
It really was
a psychological thriller horror movie. And he's a comedian, and now he's going on to do the Twilight Zone series that he's going to be doing, and also he's got another horror movie.
There's another horror movie coming out.
Yeah. So with that being said, we've seen it before work with comedians being in that role. I mean, also, shout outs to Sam Raimi, who did, the Evil Dead movies, but at the same time, he also did a lot of comedy writing too.
Right.
So, I mean, I think the best minds sometimes in horror do come out of comedy because there is kind of that uncomfortable grit in comedy alone, yeah.
And then you gotta think about it this way: who's the guy that's on board? Who's the guy that said, "Yeah, you could put my name to that"?
John Carpenter.
John Carpenter said,
"Yeah, that's
huge." They had to pitch to him. If I understand what he said, they pitched to him, and if he said no, they weren't going to do it.
Yeah, because at one point in Juncture, they pitched to him to have a scene where a body double as Donald Pleasance dies. So Dr. Loomis, but they were going to use a body double, obviously, because he's passed on.
What they were going to do is they were going to go back and actually refilm the ending of the original movie, have a body double for Donald Pleasance since he passed away over 20 years ago, and they were going to have Michael kill him.
Yeah.
And John Carpenter talked them out of it.
He said, nope.
And they said it was the best thing that they ever did. Here's
my question, though, because this will pique Moose. Did you hear Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross's remake of the Halloween theme?
I have.
How awesome would it be if they used it in the movie? Because John Carpenter liked it. And he did the score for this movie again.
Yes, he did.
Carpenter did the whole score.
That's awesome.
Has anybody heard any of the score yet?
Yes, they released a couple of the tracks.
Because some of it's on. I was up the other night, all night. And the best thing you can do is pull up the music and have headphones on and listen to it in a dark room. And it's makes you eerily uncomfortable.
It really does.
And just to think about that's what the basis of the movie's behind, you're kind of like, man, this movie's gonna be really good. If this is the tension just the music's trying to set, what's going to be happening on screen when this happens.
Wow.
And it has a lot of throwback sound to it from the late 70s, early 80s. Speaking of throwbacks, one of the things that I wanted to kind of get your take on, one of the things that they've talked about a lot leading up to this is although, and again, spoiler alert for people that don't know the story, but they're going to be ignoring all of the sequels. None of them existed, but they're talking about how there's going to be just references to every one of the sequels in it. There's Easter eggs galore in this movie, from things to a hat that Laurie had on her bedroom wall in the original showing up in this, to in the opening, in what's been playing in the trailers lately, an old lady whose house he walks into looks exactly like the old lady that's in the opening scene of the sequel. There's Easter eggs galore from what we understand. What do you guys think of that?
I think that's the way to go. I mean, listen, we're not gonna we for fans of the franchise especially, and which I'm a huge fan. You're not going to accept something that is completely different. You have to stay somewhat where you're familiar with. Now, mind you, with that being said, if you do it well enough, you can expand and make it your own thing. And I think that's where, in the past where they try to restart things, i.e. H2O. H2O was, or even Resurrection, we'll go with both of them. The reason why they failed is that they didn't pay enough attention to the past, and they kind of went off on their own tangent. They wanted to throw some things in, but then they're like, oh, well, we're just going to make this completely why would he go back? He kills his sister. Why would he go back to his house? They don't explain these things. And why does he have a different mask? A completely different mask.
I always wanted to know that.
Yeah. So you're 20 years later, it's H2O and his mask looks nice and fresh and crisp. What did he stop at the dollar store on his way in with that old car and buy a mask? And nobody was like, oh, wait, why is this scarred up freak buying a mask? But that's what we get. Sometimes you have to use logic. And that's one of the things I like about this is if you notice the mask looks worn. It looks old. It looks tattered.
And that was intentional.
Yeah. It looks like somebody had that sitting in some evidence locker or some crazed fans bought it or whatever and kept it. And when that doctor pulls it out, you're like, wow, it looks like a 40-year-old mask.
Right. And the gentleman that actually made that mask, there's some great interviews out there about that, but he did a lot of studies on how latex masks age over 40 years, and that's what he came up with. So this was very deliberate.
Isn't it William Shatner's face?
The original one was.
Okay, I thought so.
It was a Captain Kirk mask.
How about the mark on the eye? Even the detail of that, because the mask has a little chip out of the eye, and then you can see, because of that chip, you can see the scar on his eye from where he got stabbed.
Yeah, his eye is messed up, and also, I don't know if you noticed, but in the neck of the mask, where Laurie got him with the knitting needle, there's a hole in the mask in his neck from that.
It's amazing. That's
they did keep
to
all
detail.
of that in. It really wasn't. They did pay incredible attention to the details of that. I can't wait to see what the Easter eggs are from the rest of the movies. I love the series. It's my favorite series in history.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Nice.
So
let me ask, now we're in total speculation with no knowledge of the movie.
Right, just so everybody knows, the movie has not hit yet, and we have not seen this.
Yes.
One of the things I read in the reviews, and I hope I'm not ruining anything for anybody, but it's one of the only negative things I've read in the reviews, is they said there's some kind of twist that's so ridiculous that you're just like, whoa, what? And they said it doesn't last long. Because all it did was serve the purpose of getting us to Laurie and Michael, and here we go. This is the deal. What do you think that twist is that would make people groan? In almost all the reviews that I read, they're like, "Yeah, there's one part that just doesn't make any sense," and then we're back into what we need to be into. What do you think that one part is?
I'm not sure what it would be, but that's always risky. Especially the one thing I've mentioned this on another podcast that I've been a guest on before, the ODPH. This movie, I liken it to Star Trek. Star Trek has got an enormous following. They've got their own Trekkies. They've got their own people. We classify them as nerds. The horror movie, it's a community, is its own group of nerds. It's a huge community. We embrace the movies. We love the movies. We're not ashamed of the movies. In Halloween, it's almost like the New York Yankees are to baseball. They're bigger than baseball with their history. Halloween is that way in the horror genre. They're taking a big risk with, reneging the entire series, getting rid of the fact that Laurie and Michael are brother and sister, getting rid of all that and just making a sequel pick up from the original. They're taking a huge risk with that, with what this is, with what the material is. So now I'm curious to see what this is because I have not heard that. And
The thing I think is when you're talking about, like, it's going to be the same thing I think as horror fans we're used to. Like, honestly, if you think about it, there's going to be something that happens that puts them in the situation to be in that final house. Where the confrontation, because we've seen in the trailers, we know it's going to take place in her house with all the booby traps and all that happy jazz. So there's going to be some kind of, like, it's going to be like, I think, business as usual horror movie where it's just going to be just like a cringy way that he ends up finding his way there. Like he's in the backseat of a car that, there's no explanation for why he's in the backseat, and there's, it's the norm, but we're used to that as horror fans. Let's be honest. I can work past that. But the worst part about it is if they've already kind of shot themselves in the foot, in my opinion, and that is that they've already announced that there's going to be a sequel.
They've said that they are most likely going to be doing one. It's pretty much because they know what kind of money it's going to make that there's going to be a sequel, which, by the way, they have said that chances are that Danny McBride and Joseph Gordon-Green?
Yes, yeah.
Are not going to be a part of it.
Which, that's too bad. If this movie's really good, here's the problem. If this movie's really good, they need to reach in their pockets, dig deep, and make those guys a part of it, because that could be a bad move.
Yeah.
Once you start taking people out that people like, just ask the Guardians of the Galaxy fans. James Gunn goes away, and that just fizzles away.
Do they get John Carpenter back, though, if Danny McBride and
that would
what's
be
the other guy's name?
Joseph Gordon-Green.
I think it's David Gordon-Green, actually.
It's David. Joseph David. I always get it. I just know his last name because I just see it over.
Do you think Carpenter would be interested?
Carpenter's been talking lately. He's involved with a lot of things, and he's got an itch to direct again for the first time in over a decade.
Wow.
He did say that he would not do a sequel to The Thing, which is what everybody wants to see, because he said he's too old to go up into the Arctic again.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of...
I mean, that would be acceptable. I think if anybody would do a sequel and it's not the guys, if it's successful, then obviously the originator. I mean, you got to accept that at least. But I want a They Live sequel.
Oh, that would be awesome.
It's funny you say that, because that's one of the things that he said he couldn't talk about right now. But they're talking about that. They're also talking about a possible television series for Prince of Darkness.
That's awesome.
Which is an underrated movie.
That's awesome.
The funny part is they just released all those in 4K. They did a bunch of the Carpenter stuff in 4K, so he's moving into 4K.
Do you think who wins? That's the question. Who wins? Who's the winner in the end of this movie?
The fans.
Don't give me that. That is a lame answer.
I love it. It's the shill answer. It's good. I don't know. I'd love to be like Lori wins, but how do you do a sequel? I mean, she'll win the day. Because that's how you end the movie.
Well, you got to remember, though, the movie is based around Lori and her family. She has a daughter. She has a granddaughter. Lori doesn't need to be around for the sequel.
Well, they've gone away because they're not family members.
So, well, yeah, they're
so
estranged,
they've gone away from it. But, no, I'm saying like Michael and Lori.
But her family is involved.
Yeah.
My personal thought, and again, I haven't seen the movie. I don't know. I have a feeling that she's going to win the battle, but she's going to go down with the ship in this one. I don't know that you're going to see Jamie Lee Curtis come back for another one.
I agree. All
right. Any final thoughts about Halloween?
No, I just can't wait to see it. Like I said, from when we record this, we're 2 days away, and I will be seeing it. Actually, unfortunately, I'm not seeing it on Friday. I am seeing it on Saturday because my best friend is terrified, and we've made him watch other horror movies. So I'm going to watch him karate chop the air on Saturday, and that's going to be epic because his birthday's Friday. So
we're
going to give him his birthday off from it. But yeah, it's going to be awesome.
I'm really excited to see this, but it still bothers me, and I wanted to ask you guys what you thought. I thought Halloween 2 was a great sequel. Like, why not continue from Halloween 2?
I wondered that from the start, too. The whole series was based on the fact that they were siblings. Even when Jamie Lee Curtis wasn't in it, it always involved her family. Mm-hmm. So it's a big risk.
But I will say this, so Carpenter has come out and said that he wished he never did that to begin with.
Yeah, they only did that to continue it on.
I disagree with Carpenter, and I usually agree with him.
Well, I think also when you're making a piece like this, if you go back to 2, it gets into that weird, they didn't want Michael to be a zombie, if you will, or supernatural. And at 2, to bring him back 40 years later, you'd have some explaining to do. Because that is kind of like, he did blow up.
That's true.
I mean, we saw it.
Good
All
point.
Right. Well, can you guys out there, can you tell we're excited about the new Halloween that's coming out? What do you guys think? Hit us up at HorrorZone607 on social media using the hashtag HZ607. One last break and then the final segment. what are we going to close with? Stay tuned and find out. You're listening to Horror Zone 607. Welcome back to the final segment on the debut episode of Horror Zone 607's podcast. We had so much fun talking in the last segment about the Halloween movie that's coming out that I wanted to carry on with the conversation and kind of do a little something that I like to do on my website. It's been a while since I've done it, but in the past I've liked to do countdowns. So people like to hear top 10 countdowns. There happens to be 10 Halloween movies prior to this new one coming out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to count down what my top 10 is and just kind of get your guys' thoughts. So, we'll just start right with that. So number 10, I've got Halloween Resurrection.
Fair.
I agree.
I didn't think I'd have too many,
That's the one with Busta Rhymes,
that.
Moose, because you were looking confused.
Yeah.
And he had the black lips for some reason. Like he had the kissy face black lips on the mask. If you remember the Michael Myers mask, it looked it was a weird silhouette. I didn't like it.
Not to be contrarian. I'm going to be the contrarian out of the gates. If I was going to pick the worst of the bunch, I would say it would be Rob Zombie's Halloween 2.
Well, let's let him get to that.
No, I know. But that Resurrection movie, outside of the completely idiotic open, the concept could have been really good. Busta Rhymes should have died a horrible death, and when he started kung fuing Michael Myers, I wasn't a fan of that. But if you look past that,
but he did drop the most epic line ever with "trick or treat." And
yeah,
we'll edit.
There were some expletives after that.
Yeah.
If you get past that, look at the middle of the movie. They turned it into a very suspenseful. Him watching from the corner in the dark. There is, and they brought back the Halloween music because if you remember H2O, they didn't have really the Halloween music.
It was there, but it was different.
Right.
Yeah.
So I can see why somebody wouldn't like it.
And we'll talk 10. More about it as we get going with the segment.
But that's my opinion on that one. Okay. I think it was better than what people let it be, except for Busta Rhymes. He was just horrible.
And my friend Sean agrees with you on that, by the way. It's one of his favorites. So, but I got Halloween Resurrection at number 10. Number 9, I actually do have Rob Zombie's remake of Halloween.
Once again, fair enough. The first one or second one?
The remake, the first one. The next one on my list, number 8, is actually Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. And the only reason I have that before or ahead of the remake is because Rob Zombie actually got to make his own movie. He had original material. It was a movie he wanted to make. It wasn't copying something that had been done before.
But at the same point in juncture, I really feel like, I don't know. There was a lot of things that he did in the second movie because there was rumor said that he didn't want to do the second movie originally, that he just wanted to do his homage. That's why he ends it with the 44 Magnum shot to the face, because that pretty much is a finalizer. And then when he did the second movie, he did a lot of things that he said he would never do in a movie, like an off-screen kill, a slow-motion kill, all that happened in the same scene. And a flashback to that kill. So, like, there was things that he said he wouldn't never do in a horror movie, and then he kind of did them, I think, more of a snub. I don't know. I preferred the one over the other. Yeah. I don't think that either one of them are great.
Right, and I don't either. It's a fair point, and it's one of those things that everybody's got those opinions about it. I think that they rank at the bottom of pretty much everybody's list.
I agree with that.
Number 7, I've got Halloween 6, which it's not called Halloween 6, but it's called The Curse of Michael Myers.
Are you doing the producer's cut, or are you doing the
I'm doing the director's cut with this because it's a better movie. If it was the theatrical version of it, it probably would have been below the Rob Zombie ones.
I agree with you there.
So that's the only reason that it came in at number 7.
Has everybody seen the the producer cut, director cut of that movie? Because it is better than the
much
original.
More solid movie.
I can't remember.
It's available on Blu-ray now. It used to only be a bootleg thing that you could find or on YouTube.
Oh wow!
But they actually have a nice clean cut of it, so it's worth seeing. At number 6, I've got Halloween 5: The Revenge of Michael Myers. We'll go right to number 5. I've got Halloween H2O. At number 4, I have got Halloween 2, the original Halloween 2. Number 3, I actually have, and this is where you guys are going to want to fight me, and everybody out there listening is going to want to fight me because I included it on the list, but Halloween 3, Season of the Witch.
And at number 3.
Which
I
think,
don't know about fighting you, but explain on.
Yeah, a lot of people don't think that movie should be included on any list because, again, spoiler here, if you've never seen it, Michael Myers is not in the movie except for in a commercial that's playing on a television in a bar.
Which is kind of funny, but yeah.
The movie itself, I truly believe, and we'll talk about it more as the segment goes on, but my point that I want to get across with this is Halloween 3, if it was not called Halloween 3 and it was just called The Season of the Witch, would have been an enormously popular movie. It's grown a cult following over the years. It's one of my favorite. It's probably the one movie that feels like it's actually taking place on a Halloween more than any of them.
Well, it's be on the lookout because we were talking about it in the pre-production that fans are doing a fan-made sequel to Halloween 3.
Yes, they are.
So
cool.
that'll be something to keep your eye out for. But yeah, I mean, I can get your point. I guess I still can't get over the fact they called it Halloween 3.
Did you see The Spirit of Haddonfield?
I have not.
That was pretty good.
I'll
it's
have
a
to check that
fan
out.
film on YouTube. You could find it.
It's on YouTube?
Yep.
Everybody listen to that. We'll have to check that out. Coming in at number 2, my favorite sequel in the entire series is Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers.
Really good. It was solid.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously they used the name The Return of Michael Myers because he wasn't in 3, and 3 tanked at the box office.
And it also, like I alluded to earlier, has the screwy ending where Jamie kills her stepmother, and it looks like she's going to be the new Michael Myers, and they abandoned ship on that for some reason.
Yeah, and that's something I definitely want to come back on here in a minute. There's a lot to talk about with that.
Is that the dental peasants going, why?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and he tries to shoot her, and they stop him from shooting the little girl. A little controversial. At
that
the
actually
end
happens, I believe, twice in the series because that happens in part 6 too.
Yep.
And of course, at number 1, I don't think there's any surprise here. The original 1978 Halloween is number 1.
I don't see how you tie. I mean, like I've said it before, that and The Exorcist are usually number 1, number 2, depending upon order in everybody's list. Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
As far as horror movies.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, sometimes you get something else on there. Like, I know you said Black Christmas earlier, which is a great movie. But I mean, most of the time when you look at a horror movie list of the greatest horror movies of all time, usually slot 1 and slot 2 are filled by one of those movies. And then after that, everything falls into place. But
agreed.
I can't disagree with you. And the franchise, the original, is amazing.
It really isn't. You know, here's the thing. I don't know that there's ever been a more influential movie when it comes to horror than Halloween. And you can make your case for Psycho. You can make your case for things like A Nightmare on Elm Street, which, arguably is more popular than Halloween, to a lot of people.
Would you guys consider The Shining up there too?
Oh, Shining's awesome.
Shining is great.
It does, and it's definitely influential in a lot of like
Especially
the atmospheric
Atmosphere,
Without
a doubt.
Kubrick's version, I think.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
I was
I
gonna say
prefer-
I ignore that they did the made-for-TV version.
Yeah,
to please
I couldn't
Stephen
even get
King.
through
I'm
that.
sorry. I'm sorry. I had to. That was just to appease Stephen King. And
I'm with you.
yeah, I only acknowledge one version of that movie.
Nah.
But I think you wouldn't have a Freddy Krueger if it wasn't for Michael Myers, because without Halloween, the slasher craze doesn't really take off. It really doesn't. That movie like set the benchmark, and then from there they were like, all right, now we got to get every holiday a slasher, and that and it's not a horrible thing because there's some really good movies and hidden gems in there. I always tell people one of my favorite slasher movie hidden gems is April Fool's Day.
Yeah.
Oh, I say that all the
It's
time.
got the best
That's a
twist ending.
classic.
It really does.
Got the best twist ending.
And that movie's hated by a lot of the fans because of what it is. And again, we're not going to give anything away, but best twist on any horror movie ever.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think there's any argument there.
I would argue that with anybody. The end of that movie is phenomenal. Go watch it, and then maybe sometime we'll talk about it.
Absolutely.
Now, didn't they do? Wasn't there one in the 80s and then they remade it? Or
April Fool's Day?
Yeah.
There was a horrible direct-to-video one about, I want to say 10 years ago that came out. I actually tried to watch it.
Okay.
Mistake number one.
Yeah, it was
that's-
not good.
That's why I'm getting confused.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Watch the one in the 80s.
Yeah,
Don't watch the
Okay.
horrible.
The original one was made in 1986. It has a great cast. Amy Steele, who was actually the survivor
Yeah,
girl in part 2
she's
of Friday the
great.
13th. The guy that plays Biff Tannen, who his name
Yeah, I can't remember his name.
For
but,
whatever
yeah.
reason,
We'll just call
slipping
him
my
Biff
mind.
Tannen.
Yeah, Biff Tannen's in
Because
it.
that's fair enough. That's what he did.
is. Yeah, it really does have a great cast.
Hey, listen, I didn't remember the character name for Crispin Glover earlier. He's just Crispin Glover to me.
Yeah, he really is. It doesn't matter. He just is Crispin Glover. But let's talk a little bit about Halloween 4 and going into Halloween 5. We'll kind of wrap things up with that right now. Halloween 4, I think, is a phenomenal movie. It had a great ending. I do think that they dropped the ball when it went into part 5.
It was the most. I'm going to say this like this. It's the most phenomenal ending of a horror movie to set up a sequel, and then the sequel just dropped. It was just not what we were promised. For some reason, Five started adding in things that we never knew about before. That's where they started adding in the thing about Thorn, the guy in black that they never gave us, a payoff for. And then they didn't really give us a payoff in 6 unless you watch the producer/director's cut of the movie.
Well, the Man in Black was originally supposed to be Michael Myers' twin brother that was previously unknown.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no really
There was no,
good
and
way
then
to go
of
with that.
course the marketing behind the Man in the Black was great because if you remember that was around the time that Wes Craven's New Nightmare was set to come out, and shortly, so a year after that movie came out, we got to see Halloween 5. That is, we got to see the black trench coat wearing Freddy Krueger. So then people were like, "Wait a minute, is that black trench coat Freddy Krueger?" And I mean, everybody likes to speculate, but no, I don't know. I think 4 was a great movie. The ending is amazing, and it sets up so much. And then, like you said, and I agree, 5 just dropped the ball, and then they continued to drop the ball the whole way through because they made a bunch of illogical moves in the whole movie.
They did, and here's going forward a little bit. A lot of people hate Halloween H2O. That's actually one of my favorite sequels because it does go back to the original story. Again, ball dropped a little bit. It didn't take place in Haddonfield. They dropped the storyline of Jamie's
Another time though, where the ending of that movie doesn't match up with its direct sequel.
You're right.
Because you could have had a great ending and one-shot movie, but because they wanted to get that resurrection money, I guess, we get that whole horrible thing with the paramedic.
Yeah, and that was terrible. I mean, aside from that, the opening scene of Halloween Resurrection, I do kind of I'm one to stick up for that because I do like the hospital scene a little bit. Having Jamie Lee Curtis there, having everything kind of come full circle and have her end.
My favorite part of that scene is the crazy guy who's just rattling off serial killers. I don't know why.
That's great.
I just like that guy.
I love it too.
I dig that, and he should be in every movie.
I agree. And the last thing I'm going to bring up about the series, the sequels. Again, I'm going to go back to Halloween 3. For anybody out there that has not seen that movie, you've got to go into it with the knowledge that it is not a sequel to the Michael Myers storyline.
But throwback to what you were talking about, spoilers, we've already seen the trailers. They have the masks in the new Halloween
Silver
movie.
Shamrock masks that are in Halloween 3 are going to be in the new movie that's coming out this weekend.
That's awesome.
So, but the atmosphere is there. It's suspenseful. It has a great score. The characters were good. It has just everything you could want in a Halloween movie. Probably more than any of the holiday itself, Halloween, than any of the other movies. It's something about it to me. It feels like it actually takes place on Halloween. I stand by that movie and my decision to like that movie and place it where I did.
But it's not a Halloween movie.
That's why it
I mean, I don't want to be. I feel like I'm the contrarian on the list, so I'm trying not to talk too much. But
that's what the vast majority of people think.
But it's not a. Okay. I get what you're saying. It's a good movie, all that stuff. But you look at. We talked about whether part 2 of Friday the 13th was really the first movie in the series that created the Jason Voorhees line, right?
Mythos, if you will.
The first movie really was a prequel to the actual what the series would be, but it's still connected. It's all been set up to be one. Part 3 is something completely separate, and in a crash grab they put the Halloween name on it. Yeah, it happened during Halloween. I get that. I've said that I actually didn't dislike the second Halloween Rob Zombie movie that I thought was the worst of the series, only because if they didn't call it Halloween, I would have enjoyed the crap out of that. But as soon as they called it Halloween 2, and there's this mom in a horse, and
it kind of had the Jason thing, do it
and
for
they
mommy.
changed the kid.
Yeah, and
changed the kid.
Where he Michael Myers is now sexually assaulting women, which is alluded to when she's like, "Oh, go have some fun and do this with the girl," and that's not Halloween to me. That's going into Rob Zombie trying to kill off the franchise. That's what that is. Everybody dies. That's it.
You're not alone in that. There's a lot of people who believe that he tried to kill off the franchise. I'm being serious. It's a big thing out there online that the second one was really him just kind of being like, "Oh, yep, kill this off."
So, while I don't like that movie as a Halloween movie, but I appreciate it as just a movie. If it was called anything but Halloween.
3, you mean?
No,
or
the
part
Rob
2.
Zombie part 2, especially the first 10 minutes. First 10 minutes were phenomenal.
There were a lot of things to like in it.
With her in the hospital, and it was just a dream. But part 3, the movie's good, everything's good. It's not a Halloween movie.
Yeah, I mean, it was intended to be what John Carpenter and Deborah Hill wanted with that was to turn it into an anthology series.
No, and that makes sense, and that's great. If you're looking at the series as a whole, you have 10 movies, 11 movies about, and one of them has zero to do with anything the other 10 movies have something to do with.
Yeah, and I think after this movie comes out, we're going to be able to do a different top 10 list and take part 3 out of it and, have the Michael Myers story completed.
Now, was Friday the 13th part 5 still a Friday the 13th movie without Jason?
I think it kind of goes along the same lines. It fits in a little bit more because it does deal with Jason and Tommy Jarvis.
Technically, I would say yes, and the reason why is because most of the movie you believe it's Jason. Like
seriously,
it's a horrible twist at the end, but think about it. You believe it's Jason the whole time.
And
it looks like
Tommy
Jason.
Jarvis.
It smells like Jason. People are getting chopped up.
Just
it's
like
Jason.
you're saying, the main character in this movie, besides Jason,
it's Tommy Jarvis and what happens psychologically to him at the end of part 4.
Right. So I would say 5 doesn't fall the same as 3 because 3 has gotten like you said, other than a little Easter egg in the back in the day with the picture of the original Halloween on the screen. There's no Michael Myers.
Right.
And there's no Jamie Lee Curtis. There's no
technically she's
well,
in
yes,
it.
Okay, so yes, because she's the voice operator.
Yes, she is.
but I mean, there's no Laurie Strode. I should put it that way. But it is kind of funny that the tongue in cheek they did put her in as
they did.
Yeah.
And I will say this: we probably should have talked about it last segment, but the one thing that I am going to thoroughly enjoy about this next Halloween movie, and I've said it to people, and they kind of give me a weird look, is what happens the next day. What happens? You survived the night. You survived the camp. You survived the guy trying to kill you. And then the next day, what happens?
Everybody lives happily ever after, I think.
Why does the police believe that there's this mass killer and you didn't just kill all your friends and all your friends? Why?
I thought that in depth about it, but that's a good point.
You know what I mean? Like, what happens the next day? And apparently,
Moose is asking the hard-hitting questions.
He really is.
I really
inquiring minds.
This is what I think about. I actually wrote a movie in college about it. about the guy using the next day as his alibi after he was the reason why everybody got killed. It sounds like the Halloween movie explores that theory of we're 40 years later, but nobody cared about Lori the next day. No,
That's a good point.
You're all right. Go back to school. Everything's cool.
Right.
And what it does to you psychologically, where you go with that, how people treat you. And I like the idea that that's part of the story behind it.
Yeah, I do too.
I've always, Jason just killed all of your friends and tried to kill you, and then we're done. Right? I hope that hope you do okay.
Well, this has been a great debate about this. This is something I'd like to hear a lot about on Horror Zone 607's website, Facebook, or on Twitter at Horror Zone 607. We want to make sure you have the hashtag HZ607 on anything you post. And I do want to thank my guests for being on this wonderful first episode that we did here today, starting with Jonny Moose.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm being told to shill stuff I didn't want to, but I run a wrestling company, Xcite Wrestling. We're having our last show at the American Legion Post City. Are we dying, or are we going to come back for a sequel? You don't know. I
Fits right in with the episode.
Are you going to kick on it too or not?
No, hopefully not, God. I hope not. But more importantly, thanks for having me. I had a lot of fun.
It's been a pleasure. Jimmy Gazdik.
Thanks for having me, Mike. I really appreciate it. It's great talking to all you guys, and I want to do a shout out to the ODPH, Ken and Josh, also the Binghamton music scene. Binghamton music is the best, and also Never Hike Alone. Vincent DeSante, you killed it, man. I want to see a sequel, and maybe next time we could talk about it. Thanks, man.
Thanks for being here, Jimmy.
Don't forget that cool bumper music. You're not even shilling the awesome bumper music we had the whole show.
Yeah, if you want to hear some of your music, you just heard pieces of it throughout the show.
Crimson Brethren is on the show, and I appreciate you for having it on there, Mike.
Thanks for doing the music for it.
Definitely, man.
All right, Rich Coriel.
Hey, well, if you haven't had enough of hearing me on this, you can tune in and hear me every week as we do our two shows over at the Three Fat Nerds podcast family. Of course, we have the flagship 3FN and then 3FNW, the wrestling show, because I just like rubbing salt in my own wounds. So with that being said, though, we have something big coming up, too. Three Fat Nerds were invited to do Scaricon at Turning Stone Casino, October 26th through 28th. And on Friday night, the 26th, I am actually bringing Mike C with me as we are coming up because we are definitely going to have some Horror Zone 607 stuff up there, promoting it the right way. We're going to try to get some awesome interviews for this show and my show. So stay tuned to that, and we'll keep you plugged out there.
It's going to be so much fun being at Scaricon. Before I go, I do want to thank all of my guests again one more time. I do want to send a special shout out to both the Three Fat Nerds podcast as well as my really good friends at the ODPH. Without their help, everything you guys have done for me, this show wouldn't be possible. My website wouldn't be possible. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for making this possible. Again, check us out on Facebook, on Twitter. #HZ607. Thank you so much for listening to Horror Zone 607.